Well, 4 states are holding primary elections this Tuesday. That includes Idaho, Nebraska, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. To help us break down some of the more closely watched races is Simone Pathe, a senior political reporter at Roll Call. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I want to get through some of the states sort of on the West Coast, if you will. They're not really on the West Coast. Idaho, Nebraska, and Oregon, simply because I want to spend more time on Pennsylvania. Are there any races that you're really closely watching in those 3 states?
Not a whole lot going on, except the one I would note in Nebraska. You have a former Congressman, Brad Ashford, who lost in 2016, who's trying to win his old seat back. This is a seat now held by Don Bacon. So he does have a primary on Tuesday. He's likely to win it, but still, seeing all the anti-incumbency energy around the country, it's worth looking at to see if he makes it through.
Okay, and I sort of want to shift over. Obviously, we talked a lot about the Rust Belt last week,
yes.
and now we're talking coast to coast, but focusing a lot on Pennsylvania, simply because there's been a lot of factors that have changed. First of all, there's a lot of newcomers,
yes.
And second of all, the lines have been completely redrawn. And for someone at home, why does that matter? Why do they care?
Yeah, so the districts actually changed. So the makeup of the districts, the location of the districts, all of that changed because of this redistricting case that you alluded to. The state Supreme Court threw out the current districts, said it was a partisan gerrymander that favored Republicans. So a lot of these districts have been drawn to be what they would say is more fair, but in reality might be more favorable to Democrats, at least in a positive environment.
That's what I was going to ask you. What does that mean? Does that mean that people who wouldn't have been necessarily had as much weight have more weight now? Can you sort of tell us?
Yeah, so the idea, and all states do this differently, but the idea is that all voters will have some sort of equal say, and that, you know, if you're a Democrat, you'll still have representation. And so some of these districts under the new lines are slightly higher voting percentage for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election, so they could be more competitive going into 2018.
Okay, so looking ahead to Tuesday, is there impact, especially after the special election that we saw in the 18th district for those at home? Connor Lamb beat Rick Saccone, which was a surprising win for Democrats. He's a young candidate. Are there a lot of young newcomers, specifically in Pennsylvania, and what type of impact will that have?
Yeah, there's a lot of newcomers all across the country. Right. Pennsylvania is no exception. There's a lot of women candidates, especially on the Democratic side. And because there are so many open seats, a lot of people are either retiring, Charlie Dent, for example. You've got people leaving because of Me Too scandals. So you've got a flood on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, who are trying to win nominations in these seats. Connor Lamb, as you mentioned, is actually running in a new seat because of redistricting. He is going to be facing off against an incumbent Congressman, Keith Rothfuss, in the 18th district.
What are you seeing as far as issues that get brought up? We talked a lot, especially when Leland was out in Ohio. What issues, and specifically the presidency, how is he getting woven into some of these candidacies?
Yeah, so it depends what side you're talking about. It's a huge deal in primaries. Obviously, you've got Republicans running to the right. Everyone's trying to be President Trump's best friend. On the Democratic side, it depends on where you're running. If you're running in a more Rust Belt area, you're cognizant of the fact that maybe President Trump is popular in your district, but you're trying to distance himself too. In a more liberal area, some of these suburban areas of Pennsylvania, you're hearing a lot more folks who are trying to distance themselves from the president and argue that they are part of the resistance who will oppose him in Congress.
I want to ask you too, we talked about this last week as well. Some of the races were getting really nasty, and we certainly have this same conversation as if we didn't just come off an election years ago. I'm curious as to the ads that we're seeing in Pennsylvania. Is it getting quite as downright and nitty-gritty as we're seeing in states like Ohio?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that is as nasty as we saw in, let's say, West Virginia or Indiana and some of those Republican primaries last week. But it's still early, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that around the country as things get more contentious. Okay,
my last question, we only have about 10 seconds. What do you think is going to be most surprising out of Tuesday, if anything at all?
Oh gosh, I'm looking to see how women candidates do. So far, Democratic women candidates have really run the table in some of these nomination contests. Will that continue on Tuesday?
Oh, interesting. All right, Simone, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll see. We'll have you back, and we'll see what happens on Tuesday. Thank you.